Hey guys, I'm Mary and welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing a review of Age of Ash by Daniel Abraham. So before I start this review, I'm just going to go ahead and say that if you hear construction noises in this video, I apologize. My two neighbors had their driveways collapse last month after a big storm. The driveways go over a creek and it collapsed, and so they're currently having construction to fix that. So I can definitely hear it sitting in this room, but I don't know how loud it is to come across the camera. So if you hear that, that's what it is, and I apologize. So moving on to the book. So Age of Ash by Daniel Abraham is the first in a new, I think, trilogy, the Kithamar trilogy, and it came out on February 15th. And so this was my first Daniel Abraham book, and I enjoyed it. I was already interested in his two other series, but this just confirmed my interest. Like, now that I've read one of his books, definitely still interested in his other two series. Check out. So this book follows 1 year in the town of Kithamar. And so from what I understand, the series is going to be each covering that same year, just focusing on a different character point of view. So you kind of get the full story of everything that's happening stitched together over 3 books instead of being like a linear timeline between the 3. And I think that's a really interesting idea. I'm definitely excited for that to play out in the next 2 books. And I hope he delivers it well on that premise. I definitely don't think I've read a fantasy series that has a premise quite like that. But so this first one primarily follows Alice, who is this poor girl who lives in the poor neighborhood of Kithamar, and she is investigating her brother's murder and what happened to him. And so that's kind of the main premise that's built on the back of this book. However, the book ends up following more than just that. I kind of went into it assuming that would be the only storyline, but there's definitely others. She is definitely one of the primary point of views, but we get some other point of views related to her story and also developing some more other stories along with it. And I am really glad we got that, because with high fantasy, I very much prefer multiple point of views. However an author wants to do that, whether it's equally spread or just one main one with some random ones scattered in, but I definitely prefer multiple point of views in high fantasy to any degree, just because I think doing multiple point of views is the best way for high fantasy to really develop the world, and especially if you're going to have somewhat of an intricate plot, if you're going to have any kind of political intrigue, I think having multiple point of views does that well. So I'm very glad we had multiple point of views to develop this city, and as well as kind of it helped plant seeds, I think, of some of the developing plot and world things that you don't fully get in this book, but are definitely being set up to be explored in the other books. So for Alice's story, we, as said, follow her trying to figure out what happened to her brother, but really more her story is about following her grief of her in the aftermath of losing her brother. She's definitely investigating, and I think in the beginning, the grief is much more obvious, especially to her, because she just lost her, when it's more fresh. But as this year goes on, and she kind of doesn't realize she's still grieving, that you as a reader really see this exploration of how grief manifests itself, especially, I guess, as it persists, as you get farther away from the tragedy, as you start getting used to your life without this person. And I thought it was a really well done exploration. You kind of see how her actions, especially in the later part of the book where she doesn't even realize she's still grieving, are really motivated and influenced by her unconscious desire to want to keep her brother alive. And I thought, again, very well done. Definitely gives you a slower paced story, I think, since that really was what her story is about, but very well done. And then, in addition to Alice, our secondary point of view was this girl who also was in the same neighborhood as Alice. They kind of grew up with each other, ran polls together, which is like jobs where they pickpocket people and stuff. They call them polls. And so her name is Samish, and she has this hopeless and unrequited crush on Alice. And so she helps Alice a lot. She helps with the investigation. She kind of does her own thing sometimes too. We see Samish taking her own initiative to investigate things without Alice, because a lot of the story is Alice I guess kind of fighting for accepting this help, as well as kind of doing her own lone wolf thing. And so a lot of times with Samish going off and doing kind of her own digging, I think with Samish's storyline we also see some of this exploration of the idea of loyalty through this friendship. Samish got brought into this whole thing because of Alice, but there's some points where she makes decisions where she's like, do I tell Alice these things? Do I stay loyal to her? Do I stay loyal to this other thing? Is it even in the best interest for me to tell her? And it was really interesting thought process, especially because through both just the loyalty of friendship and also Samish's desire through her crush for Alice to like notice her, kind of that motivating some of what she does, and also having her wrestle with some of her decisions with what she discovers. So that was definitely interesting. We get some other points of views from some of the people in the kind of higher up noble and religious circles of the town. And I think through those is where we really start to build upon this world more, and where we start to kind of see some of the magic seeping in and a lot of the kind of political web that's being weaved that I think we will fully explore even more in the next two books. If I had to guess, I think our next primary point of view will be one of those characters, just because it'll give us this kind of opposite view of this year, especially since the first part of this book we didn't see them as much, and they slowly started becoming more and more of a story. So I think the next book will probably just start with them being the primary storyline. So anyways, I really liked those storylines too, because Daniel Abraham did a great job of fully forming this world of the city of Kithamar. I've seen some people in reviews who aren't as positive on it. One of their criticisms has been like, you don't really leave the slums very much in this book. And that's true. Alice and Samish primarily stay in that area, and then you get a little bit of the other area from these noble religious characters. But Daniel Abraham did such a wonderful job of really fully building this palpable world and city and bringing the city to life that I didn't even care that we kind of stayed in the same place, because it was just so vibrant in both areas. And so I really like that. Overall, again, as I had mentioned with Alice's storyline being more grief focused, this book in total is slower paced because of that. This whole murder investigation isn't this like fast paced murder mystery kind of pace that you might have gone in expecting, having read that from the back. I've also heard this is pretty typical of Daniel Abraham books as well. Like, so if you've read other Abraham series, you're getting more of what you expect from him in this one. I, of course, cannot vouch that statement, but I've heard that from people I trust who have read other Abraham statements, so just putting that out there. Even more so than kind of your average first book in a fantasy series, this one was very foundational and really a very heavily set up book for wherever Daniel Abraham's going to be taking the series, and I'm very intrigued to see where he will be taking it. Definitely excited to see kind of the different avenues I think he could go down with this story, kind of the different things he could explore, different characters I hope to see more of. There's definitely some characters we didn't really get points of view of in this story that I'm very intrigued and hoping we will, kind of just to see where their like actual point of view on the things we saw from a distance, again, because we're covering the same timeline in the others. I can be like, oh, I want to see that a bit from this person's perspective, which I think will be really interesting. And I'm definitely excited for the second book when it comes out, whenever that is. I have no idea, maybe next year, who knows. This is definitely a very successful first foray into Daniel Abraham for me. Definitely excited I picked this book up, and I'm definitely looking forward to diving into his other series at, at some point. They're on the TBR, who knows when I'll ever pick them up, it'd be like that. But yeah, if you've read this book, let me know what you thought in the comments. I've definitely seen some dissenting opinions and kind of some of the online discussion I've seen, and I totally understand those who this didn't work for and who didn't like it as much, but I'd definitely be interested in seeing more opinions, whether you did like it, didn't like it, felt in the middle. Just let me know in the comments, and I will see you in my next video.